So our next segment, I am very proud to be able to introduce our next speaker. Is I call him a legend, patriarch. We've been friends now for almost 25 years. He gets embarrassed every time I introduce him, but there's more knowledge in this guy's brain than most people I know. He believes in this industry from the very beginning, started in the garage, and if you think about how many companies have accomplished, sticking in this industry for this length of time and these kind of results, I'd like to have everybody give a round of applause for Anant Yardi. So.
Thank you, Jim.
My pleasure. Thank you.
But for all the good things that Jim said about me, let me share with you the fact that he said, you're not a hero. No hero stuff for you. So I'd like to talk about transformation and continue the theme that the panel discussed. And I'd like to share with you some data. The transformation that I'm speaking about is hybrid work. In pre-pandemic years past, we lived in the suburbs. We woke up in the morning, sent our children to school, and ended up in the central business district, probably in an office building. If asked the question, how many people did this? It's sort of tricky. I haven't seen any definitive statistics, but the number appears to be 40 million. And the basis for this number is the Census Bureau and then some of the other data that's available. The transformation that has been underway, and I think we are all accepting of the fact that the hybrid mode is here to stay. But what we don't know is what's the level of disruption that might be caused by this new mode of working. I'd like to share with you some stats, but before I do that, a month ago I was in New York, and some of you may recognize this building. It's the Grand Central Station. I was there at rush hour, and I was surprised with the traffic. It just felt like there was hardly anybody there. For those of you that have been to Grand Central Station and have looked at some of the survey results, typically there are 5.5 million people that use the MTA, the rails, the buses to ride into town. And this is pre-pandemic. Last month or 2 months ago, that traffic has dropped down to 2.5 million to 3 million. And it begs the question, who is coming into the city and who is staying home? Most of the people staying home would be knowledge workers, people who can get their job done in front of a screen and use their know-how and interact with other people through that screen. As I talk about hybrid, let me also point out the reason I was in New York was a face-to-face meeting. There's a class of things that cannot be done without face-to-face meetings. And so I don't think hybrid work means that you're always home or you're always in a building. It is some combination. You might ask, what is the benefit and why do people choose to work from home? And the answer, I think, as was stated in the earlier session, would be reduce or eliminate the commute and get yourself 2 hours. It could be, but to a lesser extent, you don't want to be exposed and you're cautious about COVID. By the way, in talking about COVID, let me share with you one other sort of thing. In this meeting, there were 20 people, maybe 20 that came in through a Zoom or a Teams session. The day after we left the meeting, 3 of the 20 were diagnosed or tested positive. And so it seems to me that anytime we go to meetings, there's something or the other happens. But the good news appears to be that the symptoms are just not as severe. And along those lines, my grandchildren, second year or second grade and the kindergarten, the two of them tested positive. And they were isolated. They were playing with each other. They had no symptoms. They were happy. Their younger sister, 4 years old, says to her mother, "Would you test me, please? I think I'm COVID positive too, and then can I play with my siblings?" Right? So as I say this is not in any way to minimize COVID, but it is not something that I think we should be just completely consumed by. In terms of statistics, 3 years ago, all CoreNet clients, and that's about 10,000 members, would say everybody has to come into work. In the more recent surveys, you might see, some of you might see at the bottom of that scale on the left-hand side, 11% are requiring their employees to come in full-time, Tesla being one of them, and maybe the most prominent. And this is a major change. 20%, or I think it's 29%, that are saying you don't have to come in at all. We as a company with 8,000 employees did a survey, and the question was, what is your preference? How many days would you like to spend in the office? And the answer, 90% of our employees said 1 day per month, or when you need me, as many times as you need me. The other thing that's happened, and you'll see that in the survey results on the right-hand side, 76% of all employees are saying, we would really prefer not to come into the office until there's a need for it. As we are going through this transition, the question that needs to be asked is, what about productivity? Has that suffered? Price Waterhouse did a survey, and it's the two circles in the middle. And in fact, it shows that both employers and employees have concluded that there really is not any deterioration in terms of productivity. And it's all the more interesting because employers seem to be more sure of it than employees. So as this transition is underway, we might ask the question, what's the impact on office space? What can we expect in the future? The large buildings, and there are about 70,000, 60 to 70,000 large buildings in the US, a large building being anything more than 50,000 square feet, occupies and covers 8 billion square feet of space. There are 25 to 40 million people that work in these buildings. And if you say 25 million are knowledge workers, they are in fact working from home. The stats are showing that people might come in 1 day a week, 2 days a week, maybe in some cases 3, and seldom 5 days a week. And so what does this mean in terms of the future of office space and occupancy? Our statistics show that today, nationwide, the vacancy level is 20%. In some pockets, the vacancy rate, in fact, has gone up above 20%. We are beginning to see evidence that buildings, a 100,000 square foot building, a 200,000 square foot building, when the lease expires, a tech company may or may not renew the lease. In fact, in our data, we see typically 200 to 250 million square feet of space coming up for renewal each year. In the last 12 months, the space when it came up, the data is showing that 80% of it may be renewed, new leases, or subleases. That is, in fact, there is shedding of space that's underway. And it begs the question, so what do we do? While this is happening, co-working is on the rise. The stats are showing that if there are 6,000 buildings or 6,000 co-location facilities today that occupy maybe 100 million square feet, it could go up by a factor of 4 or 5. There's another statistic in terms of revenue per square foot for leases as compared to co-working spaces, usually a factor of 4 to 1. That is, if you can lease space, office space, for $30 per square foot, the chances are that if there was a successful co-working facility location in that same space, the revenue would be $120 per square foot. It's a great opportunity to repurpose some of the vacant space and leverage it for co-working. And to the extent that there is the capacity to share revenue, I think it's a win-win opportunity for all. As we think about co-working, it's our impression and our view, my view, that if business travel today is book an airline, book a hotel, book cars, transportation, soon it's going to take the next step, which is as you do and think about business travel, I think in course of time with the right level of standardization, we should be able to book co-working spaces along with it. That is, you book airline, you book your hotel, you book your rental car, and you book your space where you're going to be meeting your clients or having your business meetings. It's an opportunity that I think we can all share in and leverage. As we do this, the purpose of Realcomm and our goal here is how do we leverage technology and harness what's available? Artificial intelligence is a key component of this, and it's still a little bit obtuse in terms of what is AI and what is it going to do for us. And in this particular sort of transition, how will AI help us? And I'd like to give you just 2 or 3 examples. Pricing, how do you price your space is one of the key questions. How do you score your leads, and how do you stay in touch with your prospects and your clients? That's another question. AI has a technique where for any problem, you create a model. And you might say, what's a model? For the pricing problem, a model would be, what are the factors that influence pricing? It might be availability, it might be the competitive landscape, it might be the number of prospects that are interested in your space. As you define these factors, you create a training database, which is you specify the factors that are going to influence your decision. You create the training database, and that relates to big data, and you push it through the AI engine. And it will give you either a simple answer, yes or no, or it could be a cluster, an answer which is likely, unlikely, possible, etc. And for me, my programming journey started with assembler language, followed by COBOL, followed by RPG, then it transitioned to BASIC, then C, then Java, and now the programming language that is popular for AI is Python. And I'm going to confess to you, I still haven't studied Python, but that's on my list. And this process of learning new things is such a vital part. So in closing, let me say that with anything new and any kind of change, there's always this question about, will it work out? There is the fear. My hope is that employees can continue to work from home, and I think that's the way this will play out. Companies can reduce their rental expense, which I know office building owners may not particularly like to hear, but I think that's happening, and that's the reason for the vacancy. Co-working operators will continue to grow. It's my hope that vacant office space will be repurposed. And in that process, in fact, there'll be a transformation. And of course, all of us as IT folks have a job to do in terms of facilitating this transition. I'd like to close by saying, in times of change, there are 2 traits that I think are invaluable, and they are objectivity and optimism. Objectivity, because you never know when you're in the middle of some kind of change, will it really happen? Am I overreacting Am I underreacting? But I like to say, with those two traits and with clarity of purpose and vision, the likelihood of success goes up. Thank you all, and good luck to you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Anant, always.